I would say find one thing that just like brings them the most joy, because I feel like if you find that one thing that brings you joy and you follow that, even if it's a hobby, that is going to continue to like build in your body. And if that continues to build in your body, that just helps to kind of flush out some of that other stuff. Because if you're finding joy, maybe it's like drawing, you're really good at drawing, but you're an accountant and you start to draw, then like those creative pathways start to open and that self-love starts to build. And then it makes these other things that you're trying to change in your life easier to do so.
Hey guys, welcome to the Beyond Hope Project podcast. My name is Jason Tharp, and I am very excited to welcome Andrea Lehmann to the podcast. I know Andrea from the gym, and anybody that listens to this obviously realizes by now that I surround myself with really great coaches, because I think I've had every coach from the gym on here. Yeah. And it is, really, really great to get to know you over these times. And we've had lots of discussions after the class and stuff like that. And so just really appreciate you coming in here. And I look forward to talking to you.
Yeah,
and,
me too.
And to dive right in, we define hope on our podcast as an impact point. So like a starting point. And then you're going to go down your path, and then you're ultimately going to fail just like everybody else does. Yeah. And a lot of people think that I'm a failure and they kind of give up there. But what we also define hope is also the way back. That path. So you can see that you didn't actually fail. You just learned, and the path just moved a little bit.
Yeah.
So with that definition, the question is like, if you can go back to any point in your life and give yourself that piece of hope, what would it look like? Maybe what would you say? How old? All those good things like that.
Wow. Could I go back every week? No,
you can go back as many times as you want.
So I'd have to say a big impact point for me in my life was going through some infertility issues and just learning a lot about myself and how to advocate for myself, and realizing that I'm not doing exactly what I want to be doing in my life. I mean, I'm still in the wellness space, but to even get like a little bit more specific to what I wanted to do. So it just all kind of worked that way. But that was a challenging time. I had 2 miscarriages before I had my oldest son.
Wow.
And it was, there wasn't a lot of people talking about it at that point. And I went to some to a dark place, like all the emotions that happened. Like I felt like ashamed. I felt grief. I felt guilty. Just like all of this stuff was coming up. And that was my first, I think, real taste of like these wounds, all of these wounds coming up around this infertility that I struggled with.
Yeah.
And I think that it set me on the path of not only like healing these wounds of like emotional things, but I looked at people around me, how people around me were supporting me, how they weren't supporting me, and learning to trust myself, my instincts, my choices and things like that.
Was that like, for you, if you look back, was that like one of the first times you actually did that, where you kind of put yourself kind of first?
Yeah, probably. There was a time, it was kind of hard when you said that. I'm like, oh, there's this point like when I was like my senior year of college, but this really was like got me moving in the direction that I am now.
Right.
Yeah.
What would you say is that biggest part that you took out of that from like where you are now?
Yeah.
Do you think you'd be where you're at now without having gone through the bad stuff?
No, not at all. Because through that, I learned how to start to have difficult conversations, because you're kind of already having difficult conversations, but I had to really advocate for myself against a physician who wasn't giving me the kind of care that I felt like I needed. It was like, oh, this happens, you know, a lot of people have miscarriages, but my cases were like a little bit different. They were a little further along, and it just like didn't seem right.
Right.
And so at that point, that was me. I mean, I think throughout my life, I'd always like listened to my intuition, not really knowing it was like that deep gut intuition. But this time there was definitely like clear messages, like, this is where you need to look. This is where you need to go. Even like finding names. I mean, I was just like a bulldog, just like going at it and figuring this out. I wasn't going to just like lay back and just hope for the best.
Yeah.
So I was taking action in my own hands.
Did you was that a trait that you've had your whole life where you've, you know, I know we've talked before about growing up and all these things like that. Was that always like something that where, you know, I always like to say I've been through so much shit, but for whatever reason, optimism always was there.
Yeah.
Do you find was it the same sort of thing for you? Is that where that tenacity comes from? Like,
I think, you know, I've always had this, like, we're going to figure it out.
Right.
Like, we're going to do it. It's going to get done. I don't know how, but I just keep forging ahead
right.
with everything.
Yeah.
And that, I don't even have to like think about that. I don't know. It's just kind of like ingrained in there. I don't,
you know,
totally. You can get down on yourself and you're like, oh, but then like I even have this bracelet and I find myself, it's called like Little Words Project, I think. And someone made it for me and it was like, you got this. And that's what I always say to myself, like start of every day, you got this. Or something hard, you got this. Like, deep breath, you got this.
Yeah.
And I'll say it like a million times.
Yeah. It's interesting because like that, you know, fight, like standing up for yourself, to me, especially when it comes in a physician.
Yeah.
It wasn't even a question for me. And that is probably the one thing that when I tell people my story, that they're amazed by.
Yeah.
They'll say like, how did you tell your doctor that they were wrong?
Yeah.
And like, did you ever have any sort of like, should I? Because I just jumped straight into it. I was just like, screw you, you're wrong.
Yeah.
Like,
no, I was nervous. No, but here I felt so strong in my like knowledge, because at this point I had also been to a fertility specialist that helped, and a couple other like Eastern like medicine practitioners that helped me feel like I had the confidence and the knowledge to be able to speak to her in this way. So when I went to talk to her, I mean, I had to bring in like studies to show her that this is not where these specific hormone levels needed to be. And she was telling me that like where my hormone was at. So here's the thing, without really, you know, getting into too specifics. And I also learned like there's no real point of going back in the what ifs. Like that happened. It's unfortunate.
Yeah.
But when I went to look back at what the lab results were, like these hormones were like 5 times higher than they should have been. And when I questioned her on that, she still was like, no, it's still okay. Like, you're okay. And I'm like, well, that's not what these people are saying. And this is not what these studies are saying. So as I hand her, you know, can you imagine a physician? And at the time I was like some like late 20, early 30s, like kid essentially giving you like a study to look at. So in my mind, I'm like thinking like, oh God, she hates me. But you know what? Then I was like, there's this like voice, my higher self, a guide, whatever, like, you got this, you know. So I did have that small part, and then I just kind of pulled through and stood up to it. And that was a hard conversation for me.
Sure.
Because that's a person of authority. I don't necessarily know what I'm talking about. But I did. And now I've helped friends through that. Like they've had the same sort of issue kind of. I'm like, get your thyroid levels checked, get your TSH checked, look at your adrenal glands, all this. And for a couple of them, that was it. Yeah. And it's just at the time, I guess that wasn't something that they were really looking at, or at least my physician wasn't. Right.
And I think that's the big part, before we jump off this and talk about a little deeper stuff too. Is that idea, like when people are hearing this stuff, your physician only knows what they're willing to learn. Yeah. And I think that's the big part where people will question, but they're afraid to question. Yeah. And they'll question other people.
Yeah.
Well, my doc said this and whatever, but you never have that conversation with your doc. And I think the big part that I advocate for people is understanding that like your doctor is not living your life.
Yeah.
Like, and so you have to be willing to ask those things.
Yeah.
You know, and I know we've talked a lot about, like, you already kind of mentioned higher self and all these different things like that.
Yeah.
You know, how out of all the stuff that you've done in that world of overcoming things and speaking and standing up for yourself, what role did that play in the evolution of where you started to learn who you were?
Yeah.
And how do you apply that, like, on a daily or best time practice of those types of things? And how do you deal with that in life?
Yeah. So, well, it showed me how much of, going back to that specific and how scared I was to have that conversation and stand up to this, how much of a people pleaser I had been throughout my life. And that's something that's still, like, I just need to make sure that I don't say too much, or I don't, like, be too opposition of what you're trying to say, you know, without really, like, saying exactly how I feel or what I believe. So that was kind of like a jumping off point for me. I was like, okay, I can do this. Like, it's okay to make people uncomfortable. And it doesn't mean that I'm a bad person. It doesn't mean they're a bad person, but, like, I don't always have to agree with you.
Right.
We can be kind to each other. And it's just like, okay, let's agree to disagree. Yeah. And so I still, you can have these conversations with people in everyday life. And I think it's just coming back to knowing that you know yourself, you feel comfortable in being who you are. And then I guess it all just kind of takes care of itself from there. Right. But it was, I don't even know where I'm going with this now, but it took a lot of, it still takes a lot of work too, because I just want to make sure that I'm being as authentic as I can, showing up in that way every time and not trying to conform and make myself to fit in here.
Right. Mm-hmm. Well, I will tell you what I think is one of your strongest points, and maybe you will agree or disagree, up to you, is that you have a cool ability to push people to a level where, and I think this is a trait of, like, a lot of the coaches at the gym, but you in particular, I guess first off, like, to kind of people, I guess, that are listening don't really know. So Andrea coaches it's called Powerhouse, and Powerhouse is so funny because I always joke with you. I'm like, you're like, you know, this little package, but pure evil. Like, cause it's just, it is the hardest. It's on Wednesday. It is the hardest thing I would say, for guys. Yeah. And the reason why I say that is because I'm usually the only guy in the class. Yeah. And for me, what you have been is this, like, this voice that has always pushed me and believed in me. And I wonder how much of your experience, or if you even practice it, I don't know, because, like, it just seems so natural to you that you'll have other distractions going on, people talking or whatever, but you'll say the little things that you know that somebody's struggling with, and you can kind of pull that out and just make a little adjustment kind of on the fly without disrupting stuff. Is that something that you're well aware of, or is it just something you kind of do? Like, is it from your own awareness? Like, where does that come from?
So I think I have, what I've learned is that I have this gifted sense of, like, seeing the body move, and, like, in, you know, like, physics and biomechanics, and I can just tell by looking at you, like, what you need to do just a little bit, you know, just to get that right feeling, get that right connection, take the breath here. And I do practice that on my own. Like, when I'm working out on my own, it's such or I should say training on my own or moving on my own. It's almost like a meditation, because like, I get deep into my body, and it helps me to feel the things, like, I mean, these teeny tiny little muscles, where are the joints at, what I need to do to feel this length, and what I need to do to feel this contract in just a certain way. I mean, I've done a lot of, like, studying and school and everything, and I keep learning, like, and I will forever. But I also think it's just like intuition.
Right.
It's just, and it's kind of hard to explain, like the way I pull, like the energy, like I could see maybe like you're holding that tension in your hips and that needs to release some way. So we're going to move you this way or push you that way.
Right.
So.
I mean, you're right on with that. I mean, there's the little, even when I'm not in your class, I'll explain to you like something hurts here and you're like, oh, well, just try this. And you're moving, you're like, oh my God, like it really, you can feel that. And
great.
So,
that's awesome.
yeah. And you're really, it's a very valuable skill that you have for yourself. And I think I have suspicion that like from our conversations outside of the class that what you've been through in your own world, in your own mind, is what has allowed you to see people for where somebody, let's say, that feels like they're not in great shape. They come in and work out with you, and it could be intimidating, because you're in great shape. A lot of the people at the gym are in great shape, and it could be like those intimidating. But you have a really cool way of making everybody feel at ease. And I think that it's got to come from your own insecurities. Like maybe you can talk a little bit about like what is something that you really struggled to overcome yourself. That to get over yourself to be who you are.
So it's interesting. Like I have when I look back at myself as like a child and I look at pictures, in my own mind, this started in fifth grade. I remember like I had like a bigger butt and I was just like, a little curvier even as like a young kid. But like the girls around me, my friends, were not that way. So right from the bat, even like taking dance, my mom made me take dance. I fucking hated it. And I remember like the dance teacher coming by, like poking me with a stick, like get your butt in. And I was like, I can't, like, this is my butt, like this is it. And so, but it was that first little experience of where I'm really starting to feel insecure about my own body. And, I did struggle, but then I look back at pictures and I was like, I didn't really struggle with weight, but a little bit, probably more. And just feeling different, feeling, like I was shaped differently than all the people on TV, all the people I was around. But what really helped me with that was like sports. And when I got into so the first soccer was it. I ran track, but with soccer, we started to lift. That's when you started to like introduce. And I just fell in love with weightlifting. I did like some competitive weightlifting in high school, which was funny. I was made fun of it because me and this other girl were the only ones that did it. But I loved lifting heavy stuff. And I still love lifting heavy stuff. And women still need to lift heavy stuff. But it gave me such a sense of confidence. And like I felt empowered that I was like, okay, I'm strong. Like my body's strong. And I'm happy that I can move with power and force, and I don't need to be this little ballerina. I don't need to be this tall. But it's funny because then I get into Pilates, and traditionally Pilates, and everyone around me is very tall, is very thin, and has this like dancer body. And then like here's me, this like short, powerful, just kind of changing up, almost like a gymnast. And I talked to Amy, and I would have conversations all the time. Like I would look at us in this lineup and be like, oh God, I just look so different. But now I've gotten to a point, and just now in the last like 2 years, where I'm like owning it. I love it. Like I like to be that for other women who may be coming in and feeling a little insecure. Like I see you, I get you, I was you in a sense. And you got this. You're capable. You're going to be strong. We're going to pull out that inner like goddess, lioness, whatever you want to say.
What's the key for somebody? Because I agree with you 100%. I think even dudes don't address the fact that like they also body shame themselves. And, and I think especially guys my age, right? Where it's like because we were told, you got to man up and suck it up, buttercup, and all of those stupid t-shirts that would be out there. Right. And, I think that the question is like, let's say I'm somebody that is, my age that is they know that they want to get healthy, and they know like, you got the doctor telling you got all these things.
Yeah.
Like, what is that like key for that you would give them as the piece of advice to get started? Whether it's even at the gym, at home, or what is that trigger that you could give a piece to get them to go like, all right, let's show up today?
Yeah. I mean, I think it's just taking one day at a time, one healthy thing at a time. So if it feels daunting for you to go to a gym, do a class, whatever it is, just start walking. Get yourself something where you can track your steps and just start walking more. Increase your fluid intake. Like things that are that simple, like it's that habit stacking, right? So if you can do a few good things, that's going to snowball into a few more positive things. And it's just making one small little change at a time.
Yeah. That's great. And with that kind of idea for you, like what was a big, massive thing that you had to like take that small step that was like a toxic thing for yourself?
Yeah.
Not necessarily health stuff, but maybe just like in general of like the belief system of that kind of overcoming that sort of thing. Cause I mean, I think that, there's always been that pressure for women to be a certain way. And like you mentioned about the butt, like that's always been my thing too. It's like, my ass has always been huge. It doesn't matter how much like I would lose or whatever. Jeans are always going to look like I wear skinny jeans. I have accepted that. Like, it's like when I'm buying the baggies and they're still tight, like I'm like, thank God they discovered those stretchy jeans. Cause now at least my jeans look normal. Right.
Well, and especially with all the quads Kyle has to do.
But what was that big thing for you? Like because I mean, I think what we do, and the reason why I ask it is I think what we do is we end up starting.
Yeah.
And then you give up.
Yeah.
And it shows back up and you think you can outrun it.
Yeah.
Like, what was that thing for you that you thought you could outrun?
Right. I think it was routine. Okay. And like organization. For me to set up myself for success. So like now it translates to like meal planning and like prepping all that stuff. So you can, because I have healthy habits, but if like I don't have things ready for me to go and I have it thought out, like, it's easier to grab pretzels. It's easier to grab rather than like carrots and hummus or something like that. But for me, I think it is I said those small changes a little bit at a time, but it's also just like, if you fall off the horse, you just get right back on.
Right.
Because I think so many people fall off the horse. They're like, well, I'm fucking down. Like, why don't I just do it? So I ate this really terrible meal and now it's all derailed. So I'm like, well, that one was bad. Just start over the very next snack you have or something like that. So I've taken that and applied that. So for me, the biggest change that has helped me is starting a morning routine. And that was, if you would have asked me 2 years ago that if I would ever be up at 5 a.m. every day, I would have laughed. I'm like, no way. I am not a morning person. But it took me a year to get to that point because I would just set my alarm like 3 minutes earlier one day.
Right.
And I would do that for like a week. I'm just going to get up 3 minutes earlier. And in that 3 minutes, I'm just going to like stand in the shower and I'm going to visualize or I'll do a guided meditation. And it just kept building. And now I have my full routine where I'm up, I do my meditation, I journal or whatever it is. It's something different. And then my day's off to a good start. I have that time for myself in the morning to be with myself, to figure out where I'm at, what emotions I'm dealing with at the start of the day.
Yeah.
And that's been just life-changing for me.
Did you have like a massive emotion, like a big monster in your closet that you had to kind of overcome that?
There's been so many. People pleasing, that started. I figured that out. And that's interesting because that kind of came later in life. Like I went from, when you asked about like, I almost like oscillated all the way to just being, to make up for not feeling good enough and not feeling worthy and feeling so different, to just being like angry and like scrappy. And I still, some of that's just like naturally in there.
Sure.
But then I swung all the way over the other way. We're like, well, I was too much of that way. So now I'm just going to be so nice and so kind to everybody. And then I was just like losing who I actually was.
Right.
And now just kind of landed back in the middle. But I think one of the biggest emotions is just that feeling of not being enough, lacking, failing, just, and it shows up and it's going to keep showing up until, and I don't know if you ever truly like heal a wound. I think you can like I mean, it's always kind of there and you can like feel it in certain ways, but it just, the energy that comes with it, intensity is like less and less.
Right.
Or I feel that emotion coming up, and I'll be like, oh, there it is again. Okay. You know, and just like asking what it's trying to tell me, essentially.
What are some good tools that has helped you deal with that stuff? Like, what are things that really have opened up that world for you to be? I mean, because clearly what you display is one of the traits I talk about in Hope is like hyper awareness, right? You're very aware of like what am I feeling in this moment? But I think it takes that other twist is what where you're at, is that being open hearted enough to do it.
Yeah.
Right. It's one thing to recognize it.
Yeah.
It's another thing to do it.
Yeah.
Like, what are some things that you could mention out there that's worked for you that might work for other people? Stuff like that.
So I started, again, back to like the pregnancy thing and everything. It's such a spiritual journey, but I started therapy like after I had some postpartum anxiety really bad with my second. And so that started to open everything up. But to be honest, and this is like probably another 2-hour conversation, that really started to wake me up or have experiences, whatever, is a medicine journey, a psychedelic journey. And I've done a few of them. And it is not that's not going to be everybody's cup of tea. But I think that just kind of flips a switch or turns up the awareness, because I think maybe it was always there,
right,
but I was just not listening.
Yeah. Tell me more about that. Like, what is that like when you say that? Like, what is it like? Are you aware of when you're on these journeys, or is it like you're in a dream state? Like how
it's
I'm kind of ignorant to that whole thing.
No, it's I am so fascinated by it and I love it so much. I think it's a good tool for some people, not for everybody.
Right.
You have to definitely be prepared, but like when you're in it, you have to have the intention set up. You have to have, there's a very specific way to go about it, because I think some people are using it. It can be harmful.
Right.
But it just shows you what you need. It brings to you, and that's the only way I can really describe it, is like, it shows you what's there and what you need to do to like heal it. And you get this clarity and you're like, yes. But then the real work comes after it's over, and you have to integrate it, and you have to say, this is what I experienced, and how am I going to take this and move forward?
Right.
You know, the first one I did was like this big spiritual awakening, meeting guides and all this. And that was life-changing. It was probably one of the most profound things of my life, was that first journey that I did.
Yeah. I've heard it a lot from people that like, you know, I've heard it on a lot of different podcasts too, where people are talking about like, you know, the way that this helps people like see, and I would say that goes along with straight the theme I've heard from, and I know some of the people that have done it as well, that goes along with it, is it's like, they've always said it just kind of shows you. That's kind of what, and I think it's interesting, because when I know you've told me about it before, I kind of feel like that's what the brain tumor did to me too.
Oh yeah, there's different.
It was kind of the same sort of idea. It was like you had to get real with the bullshit you were telling yourself, and you were like, well, this thing showed me like, you got one choice. You can get this shit together, or you might not be here anymore. Yeah. And it's like that good motivator. Yeah. And I think that's the key, is that I think a lot of people, and tell me if you agree or disagree, is that they go chasing these rabbits of this solution might be here. Yeah. But when it shows up, the same as what you're talking about, you have to do the actual work.
Yeah, you have to do
There's
the
no
actual work.
magic pill.
No.
Like
no, it basically is just showing you. Yeah. Giving you what you need, but then the real work comes. And that's where, for me, the integration is grueling. It can be grueling and all that, but it's like so fun.
Right.
I don't know. I just love I love self-discovery. I love just learning to understand myself more, being able to get closer and closer to the best version of myself. And continuing to just show that path to my kids, to my boys, you know, and like these triggers come up. I mean, sometimes I feel completely unhealed, especially in parenting. I'm like, oh my God. And then it's just like, all right, here we go again. And it's learning, okay, I'm not going to self-punish. I'm not going to like think I'm not enough. You know, that's the common one that shows up for me, is like that unworthiness or not enough. And I think that's a big one for a lot of people. And it was, it was very profound. It also, it helps you to see that you're not so separate from everybody. And that's a really abstract thing for some people. And some people would, you know, it's like that ego self, which the ego is so, it's important. It protects us, but also keeps us so separate from other people. And it puts up that wall of competition and this and that. And like through those experiences that I've had, I'm like, we're all the same. You know, we're all the same. And if we could just come operate from a place of like our heart chakra, that heart center, and just send out more love, things would be so much better. And I know this is very la and like, you know,
I agree. Yeah.
It's a challenging thing to do though. I mean,
well, I think when you're somebody that leads with your heart, it's hard to, from what I have experienced when I talk to people that are kind of more heart-led people, is when you kind of genuinely want to help people. Most traits I've seen in most people is it's a struggle with worthiness. It's a struggle with like, you know, the people pleasing. It's that balance. I would say it's more of a balance, because I definitely was a people pleaser. And I overcompensated by, you know, blowing my life up if things went well. It was like, I'll only wait, you're being like, I'm doing what you, and now things are going good. Oh, I should probably explode this because I don't deserve it. So I had I had dual things happening. Right. And, you know, I think like, you know, I know we're kind of getting close to the end here. I do have a question I want to ask you, like, is, if you could duplicate that little you with the big booty, like, and she could be across the table from you, knowing what you know now, like, what do you think that she would think about you? Like, what do you think that could you tell her that like all the stuff that she's dealing with, like how you've overcome it and the stuff you've done from it? What do you think that would be like for you?
Oh, it would be so just amazing, because I would just like scoop her up, or have scooped her up and just be like, you're so like, all these things that you feel so insecure about, that you don't like about yourself, or what makes you so amazing. And like, if you can just, you know, feel that love, and even as I'm saying this and I feel her, like I feel that softening, you know, love yourself, you know, I'm giving that love to her, and just how incredible she is.
Right.
Yeah.
And isn't it crazy how scary that was to even think about when we were younger, or like when you were growing up, or when you even started, like, you know, going through all of your stuff, like, I think what is amazing is how much the stuff scared the crap out of you at the beginning of it. And then once you get through it, you're like, wait a minute, that was the answer? Like, and one of the things I love to tell people is like, you know, I don't know how many times I've said it on this even a million times, like try to tell people, like, you don't understand, everything you want is hidden behind everything you're afraid to talk about. Everything you're afraid to address in yourself. And it's amazing to me how much of our shit is rooted in, like, most of it's lies. Stuff that we thought. You know, I always would say like, hey, I was bullied my whole bullshit. I wasn't bullied my whole life. But those were really profound moments. That felt like a lifetime. Right. And for sure. And I think that's where you kind of, you know, when you bring up, I loved asking people these questions about as a kid, because what it does is it brings up those moments. And you're kind of like, okay, well, wait a minute. Like, think about like how many people out there that aren't willing to go seek and stuff like that. And that's really kind of what we're trying to reach with this stuff. So I guess the one thing to kind of wrap up would be like, if there's any kind of sort of gift of hope that you could give to other people out there listening, like that are struggling, you know, it doesn't have to be a woman, but a man or whatever, that they're just the same place you are, stuck in people pleasing. They were stuck in like self-doubt. They were stuck in worthiness. Like, what are those, like, what is a little nugget that you can drop on their life today as a little guidepost that tells them like, hey, like, I've been here before too. Like, gosh, I would say,
I would say find one thing that just like brings them the most joy, because I feel like if you find that one thing that brings you joy and you follow that, even if it's a hobby, that is going to continue to like build in your body. And if that continues to build in your body, that just helps to kind of flush out some of that other stuff. Because if you're finding joy, maybe it's like drawing, you're really good at drawing, but you're an accountant and you start to draw, then like those creative pathways start to open and that self-love starts to build. And then it makes these other things that you're trying to change in your life easier to do so.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's great. Yeah. Well, hey, I just want to tell you how much I appreciate you being in my life.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. You're one of my favorite people to have in class.
And and I do, even though like today I whimpered. Today I take
whimpered. That as a good thing if Jason's whimpering. So
it was like, oh my God, like my hips can't do this. But I just really do want to just tell you how much I am proud to call you a friend, and I appreciate you. It's funny when you can say that to people that you're paying to like basically kick my ass.
Right.
But I do. I appreciate you. I appreciate what you do for the group. I appreciate what you're doing for yourself.
Yeah.
And the life that you're building for your kids to make them understand that it's cool, to be, because your boys crack me up. I mean, they definitely have your fiery side.
Yeah.
I mean, like,
yeah.
I always joke about that when we were push plating, your kid jumped on the plate and was dogging me because I wasn't going fast enough.
Yeah.
So, I just really appreciate you. You're doing an awesome job of being a human. It's not easy, and I just really just want to celebrate you and I really appreciate you coming in here and spending some time and dropping it and being open to share some of this stuff and everything. And guys, I will make sure that everything you need to know about Andrea will be in the show notes, the links to her bios, links to her Instagram where you can follow. If you want to get some, Pilates, get your butt kicked too, get back in shape, or if you just need some words of encouragement, those are all things that she's awesome at. And so until I see you next time, we hope this helps.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Foxland Media. Think big.